right. Hello, and welcome to Artificially Intelligent, a show featuring a black musician in Philadelphia and a white cracker-ass comedian in Iowa, because where else are you going to find a white person but Iowa? That is Antar Goodwin. I am Nathan Timmel, and we are two old friends who decided that, wow, we're pretty awesome. We should record our conversations for zero reason. So that's what we do.
Yes. For posterity.
For posterity. All right. So we, being friends, don't record all our conversations. And we had one a couple days ago. And you said something that I thought was interesting. But what I found more interesting was the fact that the way the universe works sometimes, where when you buy a car, then you see that car all the time on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
So I had picked up and was reading, I picked up to read Tribe by Sebastian Junger, like all his books. And after you made your comment, which I'll paraphrase and then I'll let you give it completely, I read this passage. Where is it? Humans don't mind hardship. In fact, they thrive on it. What they mind is not feeling necessary. Modern society has perfected the art of making people not feel necessary. It's time for that to end. And I thought that was pretty insightful right there. Mm-hmm. But the thing it related to, as far as our discussion, you said, and this is where I'll let you take over, because the paraphrasing it, you were talking about the sense of community you saw in the Jewish community. And then you started relating that to other communities. And that's what this book is about. It's about a sense of community and how that helps people survive. So do you remember exactly what you said? Or probably not exactly, but a paraphrase of what you said regarding community and or...
Well, I don't know exactly what I said, but I'm sure it was along the same lines of what I would say at any other point about it. I have a handful of friends who are Orthodox Jews, and one of them, we were talking about it, and he said he raises his children in an Orthodox community because he knows that every time, no matter what house they go into, no matter what they do, no matter, like, in general, as long as they're going to another Orthodox house, they're not going to watch anything crazy on the television. They're not going to eat anything he doesn't want them to eat. There's going to be no language, no music, no anything that he wouldn't approve of in his own house, because he knows that all of the houses in general are run under the same basic guidelines. There's differences, but you know what I mean? That's what he said. And he said that there's something really powerful about that.
Yeah.
And
scary. I mean, we can argue both sides.
Well, right. I mean, there's so many ways to come at this, but like, I feel like if you think we talked about this, I think there's these four things, there's love, compassion, intelligence, and discipline are these four things, right? And I think that most communities have 3 out of 4, most of the good ones. The best ones have 4 out of 4. You know what I mean? I don't know anybody who has 4 out of 4. But as a community, you know what I mean? Like that, like, meaning that, like, I know lots of people who have lots of love within their own community for everyone within their community. And they have lots of intelligence and lots of discipline, but they don't necessarily have compassion for people outside of their community. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I was thinking, is you have those 4, but sometimes when you have a community, and any community, it can become a 5th tenet could be intolerance, because you're not like us.
Right, exactly, right. And I get it, right? Like, well, tell me what you wanted to say about this before I go off on one of my ridiculous things.
I didn't have any. I just found it interesting that we were talking about community, and then I happened to pick up a book that's about community in modern society. And I mean, my mind went a million places, things we've talked about in the past. When I was in high school, my community was the heavy metal community because I felt
Mm-hmm.
accepted around people with long hair and torn jeans when I didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
accepted at home. Um, it's been widely studied that people join gangs when their home life is
Mm-hmm.
fractured. So the gangs gives them that sense of community. And I guess the only thought I had in my head is discussing the pros and cons of each side. The what you said, going to any house and knowing that these people share your values is a good thing. At the same time, you have the Flat Earth Society, where, and did you see the documentary Behind the Curve on Netflix? It's really worth it. It talks about the Flat Earth Society, and at one point, a scientist, um, I think they're at a bar and they're having just a scientist celebration, and I think they're mocking flat earthers. And this guy stands up and says, "Hey, it's all good to make jokes about these people, but all that's going to do is drive them further down their path. We need to find a way to accept them and, teach them." So, community can be a good thing, and it can also be very scary and damaging. I mean, white people are an example of that. Whenever they decide we just want to be a community, they tend to lash out at others that don't look like them. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess my only thought was the pros and cons of the idea of community.
It's interesting because I feel like one of the things that I have come to, one of the things that the pandemic and all of the ensuing things, the Trump years and all that stuff, like love him or hate him, he gave everybody something to talk about for a half a second.
And two communities there. You had a community that was
Right,
for him and a community that was against
right.
him.
But one of the things that I realized throughout all of that, which was really kind of liberating for me, was expanding the definitions of the words that I had already known, right? Like expanding what it means to be black and male, right? Like there's a stereotype version, right? But that's not encompassing enough, right? That's not the stereotypical definition of it is not broad enough to encompass all of black men. So for me personally, I've had to expand what I believe that means. I feel like, you know, we might need to expand the idea of community to extend beyond people who just look like us and think like we do, right? Like we might have to just expand what that means because arguing that like if we are a country and we argue that well, I guess it's like if a country is like a body, you know, is the brain more important than the heart?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's a
Right?
nice
You
metaphor. I
know,
suppose that would be called
right?
metaphor. Mm.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, just because I don't know what the fuck my spleen does doesn't mean it doesn't have value. You know what I mean? Right?
No, I'm gonna have to
Like,
Google it because I have no clue either. It's just one of
but
those things you hear about. Yeah.
but you know what I mean, right? I might be able to do without my appendix, but if it blows up, it could kill me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Right? Like I don't know. Like maybe we're all supposed to work together. You know, like maybe like collectively we build something, and if we keep fighting, it's kind of like cancer. You know what I mean? Which is arguably one of the number one killers, cancer and heart disease in this country, and yet it seems to be the two things that, like metaphorically, we suffer from. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, so I don't know.
No, that makes sense, and that was one of the thoughts I had. Is the more we, I guess the way I put it was isolate ourselves in certain communities, the
Yeah.
more isolation is bad. Basically, he made me think of Bulworth,
Mm-hmm.
where the opposite of isolation, where he goes on his rant and says, I can't remember it, but basically we should all just be fucking and fuck the color out of everyone so that we're all just, you know,
Is that right before they shot him in his head?
uh, no, a
Sorry,
little before it, but he goes,
spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the movie.
Oh, but I had another thought too, which was, and this is the pro side of community. You and I talked about this the other day, the musicians community or the comedy community. I mean, it
Yeah.
can be a very healthy thing. I heard news of a friend of mine, and I went to look it up. He said, "Hey, did you hear about our buddy?" I said, "No," and I looked him up on Facebook, and it said "add friend." I'm like, "This is my friend. We just hung out. Why am I not friends with him on Facebook?" I know we were friends, so I texted him. I said, "Hey, fuckface, why'd you unfriend me on Facebook?" And he laughed and said, "Oh, you called me fat, and my wife got angry. She doesn't speak comedian." Like he got it. He got it. But he said, I just didn't want to have to deal with her. Like, why is your friend calling you fat? And I wanted to respond like, did she not know? Like, like, is she sort of, I mean, what, I couldn't even think of a joke there. Is she, because she can't be Helen Keller because she still had tactile input, but he got it. He said, yeah, she doesn't speak comedian. I mean, he didn't care, but it's like, and musicians, you just feel comfortable around them because you speak the same language.
Yeah.
But
No, it's very true.
comedians and musicians wouldn't exclude anyone from our community. You know, it wouldn't be a matter of you're a musician, I'm not going to talk to you. You know, I suppose you want to widen the definition of community. Does it have to have boundaries?
Right. I mean, see, it's like it's an interesting thing, right? Like we think of boundaries as like it's like what is it the like a gilded cage, you know what I mean? Like your castle is your castle, but it's also a prison, right? Like it's a place that, like when the people come and surround it, you can't get out or whatever. There's always these analogies about like every uphill is a downhill and all this stuff, right? All these opposites.
Mm-hmm.
But like what if like again, what if we make the analogy that it's I don't know, like an ecosystem, right? Where you know a plant of a flower is not a bumblebee, but they somehow work together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they have their different communities. The flowers have their section and they chill and they do their thing, and the bees do their thing, and yet somehow it works together. Like again, your heart is your heart and your brain is your brain. They're two very different things. They have their boundaries, but yet somehow they figure out a way to work together. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe we can have our communities and also do this other thing, like right, maybe it doesn't have to be such a binary idea of if, but I mean here's the thing, right? Like if we like how I never want to talk about this, right?
We're going to
But
talk about race.
we are. The
Because I
problem
want
with
to,
it
I'll
is
talk religion if you want to go off race, because I have ideas, but
right.
go ahead.
I mean the problem is that if we're talking about race in this country, whiteness as a thing doesn't really exist, right? Like whiteness was like this thing that was created to make sure that the poor white trash slaves were not mixing with the black people and revolting. So they decided to take all of the white people who from their place were just the poor wretches of the earth. And when they landed here, they stopped being Irish, Italian, whatever, and became white, right? But the only way that white has any value is up against something else,
Well,
right?
you're
So,
not saying
right,
anything. I mean, you're talking about a historical context. You're going
right,
back way too far. Go back to the past 4 years. Build the wall. Build the wall,
right,
because that was frighteningly transparent in racism. Like,
right,
we don't want those brown people coming into our country.
right, right. There's this, and that's the thing is like, I was at a party the other day and we are talking about going to college and where'd you go to college? And I was like, oh, I was in Boston. They're like, how'd you find it? One of the guys, an older white guy, was like, my daughter went there. She didn't like it so much. So the people were kind of rude. I said, funny thing is, like, whatever, like, I hadn't been called the N word in any kind of real derogatory sense in any real way since being like a child until I got to Boston. You know, like, I had some
Which is what
incidences
it's known for.
right, but like, I had some incidents as a little kid, You know what I mean? And then some as a teenager, but just, like just kids being stupid. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it might have been racist, but it was probably just more, I know I can say this and it's supposed to hurt you.
Right.
You know what I mean? More than it was like, I actually dislike you because you're brown. You know what I mean? Right. But like I got to Boston, some old lady's like, "Go back to Africa, nigger." And I was like, "Good lord, lady, white people have been here for like 300 years. Your people, like, literally, I can still hear the tinges of your accent that you try so hard to get rid of. Like,
Right.
fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, fuck off. You've been here for like 50, 60 years. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, how are you, like, this whole thing that, like, people whose families got here in the 50s think themselves more American than black people. It's like, go fuck yourself.
Well,
Do you know
not just,
what I
I
mean?
mean,
Like,
to
that's
get off
it's
race, there's
ridiculous.
the story we've talked about on this podcast a million times. You and I were just insomniac and out walking one night, and a car drives by, faggots, just
Right.
because we happened to be near one another. We weren't holding
Right.
hands, and then we bumped into actual gays, two gay guys, if you
Well,
remember, who explained, "Oh yeah,
yeah.
the park is you shouldn't be here at night because you will get hate crimed." I'm like, we're just walking in a park, but
Right. Yeah. And
Boston Commons, I believe.
and the funny thing is that I suppose that's what people call privilege, right? Is the ability to like be a heterosexual couple and walk around and not have people throw shit at you is like right, because like in that moment we got mistaken for something that we weren't, you know?
But we could have
But
been.
right. But you know what I mean? Like we got mistaken for something and it could have turned out really fucking badly for us. You know what I mean? Because
And
of somebody's accident. But like if we were a heterosexual couple in that same environment, it would have never happened. Like
yeah.
that's an interesting kind. Like when people
But
talk
neither one
about
of us was even
privilege,
afraid
that's
because
what they mean.
we were confused. We didn't even think.
Right.
Did you think to be afraid because of any sort of
No.
spidey black sense? Like, uh-oh, I know what hate
No.
sounds like. Yeah, I was just more confused. Like, what the fuck are they yelling at us? Like,
Right. But I mean, but like, but it's interesting, right? Like it's interesting because like when you think you would like as as a black person hate that shit like
as
reading
a
some
black person speaking for all black people, which
right
you will be
exactly
doing.
but I hate that when like we're reading some article some person goes as a black person I feel that I'm like really like I mean I get it but like whatever but like it's an interesting thing to think about privilege right because it's not something that I think I have lots of privilege not because I'm black, but because of just how I grew up. I grew up in a relatively suburban, working class neighborhood. I had two parents in my house. They got along with each other relatively well, you know what I mean? As well as two people can, who have two kids, you know what I mean? And, you know,
And I feel the
you know what I
opposite.
mean?
Whenever anyone says I have privilege, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I grew up fucking poor white trash on welfare for a chunk, and my parents hated each other. And I know, like,
Right. Right. I mean, but I mean, but like, but when we think about privilege in terms of like safety and stuff,
right.
I don't like, I very rarely I'm afraid of large groups of anybody, right? Large groups of anybody walking towards me would make me be afraid. Doesn't matter what color they are. Doesn't matter, unless they're like children, you know what I mean? Unless I'm like, see, can't even, oh, God's fucking liberals. God damn. Like literally,
Where are you going?
you can't even make any of the jokes that are actually funny
Yes, you
because
can.
because
This
they
is a
don't
safe
speak.
space.
They don't. No, it's not.
This is a safe space for jokes.
They don't speak comedian. but but yeah, but like, but it's interesting because my safety. I often don't feel threatened.
Were you going to say little people?
I wasn't. I was gonna say something about certain parts of the world where children are really violent and shit.
Oh, African soldiers.
I wasn't even gonna go there. So I was gonna say Eastern European there,
Oh,
Mr. Racist.
ah.
No, I
I've
wasn't
seen the
gonna
movie
say
Blood
Eastern
Diamond.
right. That's right. I know. I know what it
I
is.
know, I've
I know it
learned.
goes on. I know what your
Hollywood teaches
people
me
do.
things.
I know what you people do. Right? No, but like, like the thing is that like I don't often feel threatened because I'm the threat. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
right? I don't see myself as a threat, and anybody who knows me surely doesn't see me as a threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, but I understand that in the eyes of the public, I am the scary one. So I don't often feel fear because I know that I'm not the boogeyman, but if they think I am, then they're more afraid of me than I am of them. You know what I mean? So like I don't actually have to be afraid in most places because I know that unless there's too many people in one group who are afraid if you cause a problem. But one on one, if I'm just walking down the street at night, or not even at night, just at any point, if I'm just walking down the street, I generally don't worry. And if I'm walking with another guy, I don't worry either, right? And what are you, 6'1", 6'2"? Like, how
Well,
tall are
I'm
you?
6'1". I used to be 6'2"
Right,
when we knew each other, and I'm
right,
shrinking because as I age, it's just,
right.
I went
So
to the doctor. I remember the first
you know
time
what
he
I
said,
mean?
"Oh,
Like
you're 6'1" and 3/4". I'm like, "No, I'm 6'2", and then 6.5, and I am down an entire inch.
yeah, I think I told. Yeah, but uh, that's. But yeah, I
By the
mean
way,
that's
when
the
it comes
thing.
to you not being scared because you're the scary one, I don't have a joke here. I wish I did, but what you made me think of is, oh, they always say the rattlesnake is more afraid of you than you are of it. But yeah, it's still more fucking dangerous. So as the black guy, maybe you are more dangerous. I don't know.
Right, exactly. Um, but but you know what I mean. But like, if I'm walking down the street and I'm walking with a guy next to me who's 6'2", like what the fuck am I afraid of? Like
Yeah.
really, like what? Like other than a larger group of people, what do we have to be afraid of? But yet in that moment, we were two dudes, a black dude and a dude who's 6'2", and we become the objects of like we are the ones who should be fearful in that moment to a
Yeah.
degree. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, you
And
think
that's
back
an
on it, they
interesting
could have pulled over. There
experience,
were
you
four
know?
guys in that car. If they had
Right.
been
They'd have told,
drunk in beer bottles, they could have thrown shit at it. Who knows?
yeah,
You
oh
know?
easily. Or they just could have been football players who were in way
Yeah.
better shape than we were, or any athletes who were just way better shape than we were, and tracked us down and beat the piss out of us. You know what I mean? Like Jesus, it'd have beat us senseless.
Yeah.
And thought nothing of it and gone home and felt like heroes and told their friends, we just beat up a couple of gay guys. That's not the word they'd have used, I'm sure, but
No,
you
they
know
would
what
have
I
used
mean?
fags.
Right. They just said, and then they told their friends and they'd all gotten high fived. Do
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, and nothing would happen. And back then, the truth of the matter is that I hate to say this because it sounds fucked up, but had we gone to the police, I don't think anything would have happened.
No, probably not.
I
They would
don't think
have.
anything would happen. I think we'd have gone to the police and said a bunch of people beat us up, and they called us faggots, and they said, "Oh, well, what were you? Well, what were you fruits doing out of late at night?"
Yeah.
Well, we're not. We're just college kids going for a walk. And like, and I hate to stereotype, but
And you don't know better.
right. I firmly believe that had anything happened and we'd gone to the police, nothing would have happened. You know what I mean? It would have just been whatever, you know? And that's a weird thing, you know what I mean? Like, because again, we are supposed to be beyond that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you were going to talk about religion for a minute, and I'm like,
Well,
yeah, Lily, but like half these people identify as one of the big three, you know, one of
it
those
wasn't so
desert
much
cults, you
religion.
know?
I was making a joke to take you away from race, but my thought was more voting because a sense
Mm-hmm.
of community is good until you take it into the idea of now you have to live this way too. And I said religion because what I thought of was Mormonism. Um, they passed a law. It's the most fucked up law in the world because
Mm-hmm.
they passed a law that said porn is illegal on smartphones. But the thing
Nice.
is, the law will not kick in until a number of other states also ratify that law. So it's not like they're telling Verizon or AT&T, you have to cut Pornhub from your servers. But if a certain number of states, so it's this weird law that's not a law, but it's also, yeah, great.
What
Mormons
is
don't
the
like
what's the point of that?
it's the point is grandstanding. The point is we're going to legislate morality, which is what nobody wants except for people that generally hide behind their own lies, like any Republican senator who's anti-gay who is doing a wide stance tap in a in a Minneapolis airport bathroom. um but that, I mean, that's why when you look up the Pornhub searches, it's got all sorts of fucked up shit in the South where
Oh
they
yeah.
they stand out and rip and then go into their own houses and like get online.
You know,
Um,
the vast majority of like people who watch black dudes with big dicks fuck little white girls
Southern, yeah,
is Southern white
that's what
dudes.
they always,
Like,
yeah.
it's like fascinating. Like, wow, like what a fascinating idea. You know what I mean?
And they scream about it in public and do, and that's the sense of community I do not like. The idea of, I mean, there are laws we can all agree on. Well, maybe not, because there are stand your ground laws that get used inappropriately all the goddamn time. I was going to say like murder's a bad thing, but two guys get into a shouting match and one shoots the other and says, "I feared for my life," and they go, "Okay, you feared for your life." It's like the other guy didn't have a gun; he was just, they were shouting, and one guy got shot. I don't remember where I read that one, but um, the whole point is, yeah, when you take your sense of isolation into the voting booth and use it so to create a community for all that no one wants.
I mean, it brings up a handful of things. What you said, you know, the idea that you can't legislate morality, right, or shouldn't, rather, right, and the idea. But I mean, I guess like if how do you get people to be moral if you don't legislate it?
I
Like, how
mean,
do you actually do it, right? Because here's like,
I
right,
think most people
let's.
have a moral center, and if they have a
But I
healthy home
mean,
and family and are, I mean, I think that's more important than laws that say don't do this.
but then why not just legislate family as being mandatory? Why not just make it like mandatory that you can't have, you know, can't like no, like the like everybody gets mandatory sterilization until they get married, and then you can get unsterilized or something. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't be
Like
opposed to that.
I mean, it'd be a little ridiculous and invasive, but I mean, but like realistically, like right, like we have religions, but honestly, I think that the
Yeah, and Catholics fuck little boys. And the holiest
I
of
mean,
the, I won't name any
yeah,
religions because I don't want to get suicide bombed by a peaceful, loving religion. But it's well known that the more powerful you are in certain oil bearing countries, you child slaves and sex slaves of 14-year-old girls. And I mean, the movie Taken was a movie, but there's a hint of reality there. I mean, it happens, but well, look at ISIS. When they ran riot across Iraq, I can't remember the name of the ethnic minority they enslaved, but the women would tell stories of these men coming in and raping them, and then praying and saying, "It is okay that I did that to you because what I do is for God." I mean, people have fucked up ideas of what's okay because of their religion. So you can't use laws to legislate morality. You can't use religion. I don't know
but I
what
mean,
you do.
but maybe you can use laws, right? Like really, like religion's not going to do it. Obviously, I wish it could. You know my feeling about religion. I'm not anti-religion at all. I'm pro-religion.
Yeah, I wish I
I
could
just
like religion. I wish I was religious in
I
a weird
mean,
sense.
right? Like I wish that the words that were in the books were the words that people lived by. I do. Right?
Well, the good words,
The good ones, right?
not the and then stone your slave
Right.
if he
Well,
betrays you or
and this is the ultimate problem, right? Is like we and again you get in all trouble when you say this kind of stuff, but like we act like the Bible and the Constitution and the Quran and all these things, and like
you
we
said it,
act
not me.
like
I'm not getting suicide bombed.
right, but we act like all these things are like they're written literally in stone, like the Ten Commandments or something.
I've said that a million times. Like the
Like,
Bible has been edited throughout history. Oh, I want to get a divorce. Boom, King James version. So why can't it be edited in 2021 to say, you know what, gay is okay or whatever? You know, like it's looked at as so rigid, even though it's been interpreted multiple times throughout history. For some reason, they think it just got to. I mean, the Constitution has amendments because they went, okay, well, they kind of missed this. The Bible
yeah,
needs amendments.
I mean the it's like oh god, like it's so hard like to say this stuff without just I like I because I know everybody does it, right? So it's hard not to just like jump on old white people, you know what I mean? Because it's like I realized something the other day. I took a shitty gig
I
that
gotta
paid
write
that
something down so I don't
yeah.
forget. Sorry.
I took a shitty gig that pays shitty money. Like it pays okay money, but it's just kind of it's shitty. And I did it. And after I was done, I was like, sometimes you take this low hanging fruit and you think that your tongue is on an apple, but that hair is really that's just Satan's ball sack. You know what I mean?
Why did you take the gig? Did you
Just
know
because
it was
I
going to
was
be shitty, or did you just want something to do, or it's
nah,
the
I'm
pandemic and
right.
you're
I
like,
mean,
fuck, I
that's
need to
kind
get
of
out
what
of
it
the
was. I
house?
was like, oh, well, I'm free and it's decent
Yeah.
money. It beats it was over the minimum. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it
All
it,
right.
it hit the mark and
I do those too. I
right
call it a
and
mortgage
it
payment.
right and it was just. But I did the gig and I was just like, oh god, like well, that bad taste in your mouth after a gig. Yep, that's what Satan's balls tastes like. And so I I've been really leery of the low hanging fruit, even in a conversation, like jumping on old white people. But like it's a little bit ridiculous because like the Bible was changed all the time. Back in the day, they had slave Bibles that they wrote specifically for them so they could read it and be better slaves and stuff. And it's like, right. So it's okay to change that, which is what you're alluding to. It's also okay to put a big blue stripe and make the American flag different shades of blue and put a big blue fucking stripe in the middle of it that says Blue Lives Matter. And that's somehow okay. Right? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, who says, you know what I mean? You're not supposed to
Yeah.
do that. Right? Because if a bunch of black folks said, well, we're Americans, and they made a flag that was all just different shades of whatever the fuck, and did that and be like, this is, we're Americans too. People lose their fucking minds. It's
And
like,
you're
right.
saying this as someone, we've argued on this podcast that the police should be funded further. We're both against defunding the
I
police. Let
mean,
let anyone, lest anyone tune in right now and go, they're talking down about the cops. No, not at
no,
all.
I'm not talking about the cops. I'm talking
No,
about
I know.
assholes who deface the flag
Yeah.
and call it patriotism. That's what I'm talking
You have to
about.
say it though, because people get
Right.
easily
Oh,
confused. They hear what
listen,
they want to hear. They
listen.
they get triggered. Is he talking
I,
bad about? And then that's where you
I
lose
think
them.
but the problem is like we have a thing, and maybe it's worldwide, right? I don't know because I've traveled a little bit, but not
Before
enough
you
to
say
say
anything,
that.
I'm going to say yes, it is worldwide. Whatever you say, it's probably
It
worldwide,
probably
because we
is.
forget, we think that America invented racism and hating your neighbor and differences. And then you go out and you see like, oh yeah, in Burma, the Buddhist monks are killing Muslims. And you're like, oh, I thought Buddhist
Right.
monks were supposed, it's like, this is not, so
Right.
continue your thought, but I'm going to guess that the answer is yes.
Well, we have a thing here where we feel like if we know something, like if we are aware of a problem, that the problem is magically gone. Like the awareness of the problem is
Oh,
the solution, right?
yeah.
We
Global
believe,
warming. Well, we know it exists, so it must be okay. Someone's working on it.
right?
Right.
Or people say like you'll sit around and we'll like if you and I sit around and bitch and moan for a little while, then we go, well, we talked about this. I said we didn't actually talk about it. We talked at it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like we do a lot of that. We do, like when you talk about like the Catholic Church and banging little boys, it's like that was everybody was in on that. The
Yeah.
parents were in on it. Everybody was in on it. Like the boys would come home and tell their parents. Their parents would be like, "Fuck you, that's not true," and beat their kids and say,
I
"Go to
don't
your
even know if
room."
they would
It's
do that.
like,
I don't think that
you know what I
some
mean?
might do that, but I think it was even worse than
You
that.
know,
I think the parents, I mean, there was some of that, but there are others where they were like, "Hey, why'd you do this to my kid?" And they'd get sit down like, "This is the church. God has a power. You just be
right?
quiet."
Yeah,
And like the
yeah, like
parents would stay
right,
silent
yeah.
because the church had such authority over them.
Right. I mean, that's what I mean. Like the church was in on the cover up, the
Yeah.
parents, like everybody was in on the denial, except that the kids, like, and this is where like when this is the idea where when I say things like racism is like stupid, like it's a trick. It's a trick to keep people because those were like little white boys.
Yeah.
Those little white boys were getting fucked by priests. Those aren't little black boys. I'm sure some little black boys have been abused by
Yeah.
and I'm sure
Well, they
women.
were just not
I'm
here
sure,
because the thing was worldwide. Wherever there was a missionary, there was someone
right,
fucking a little kid in that country.
right,
That's what they discovered. As soon as America broke wide, they I saw a documentary or whatever, and it showed like the end scroll was after, I think it was Milwaukee broke. they talked about all the cities, and then it even expanded further back to missionaries, and you're like, oh, now there are this many cases in Peru and this many cases, like, yeah, you think it's different anywhere else? No, it's
Right? Like this shit's been going on for a long fucking time, and they've been covering up, and little white boys were getting raped, like getting raped,
mm-hmm.
boys, not like men in jail, right? Like when they say, well, men in jail get raped, it's like you feel compassion for those cats. You're like, man, that really sucks.
Do you?
Well, it depends on what they did. I mean, if
I suppose
you're,
so. Yeah, it depends on what they
right,
did to
but
get it.
like, but at the same time, there's a bit of like, but you did something that got you there. What happened to you was terrible. You don't deserve it, but you did something that put you in a position where that could happen, right? I'm not trying to find any way to sound like I'm justifying it, right?
No, because
But
prisons
because
also need reform, because they're the community in
again,
prison is divided, and
right?
if
It's
I go
just
to prison, I have to become a Nazi, because if I don't, I get beat up. So I have to join my clan so that I get protection. I mean, that's just the way it
yeah,
is.
right. It's like such fucking nonsense. But like little boys, man, like nobody cared. Like we like the
Mm-hmm.
whole like everybody knew. We've been making jokes about it since we were kids, and our parents made jokes about it when they were kids. So it's not like everybody didn't know that it was happening. And yet nobody did anything about it for like, you know what I mean? Like that's
Well,
kind of crazy because
I'll
like
go
at
you
the end
one
of the day,
further.
they don't fucking care what color you are. They don't care. Like it's a distraction. It's a lie.
Yeah,
But yes, what were
and
you gonna say?
well, I mean, instead of going into history, just again, like I said with a little while ago, stay within this century, which is only 21 years old. Um, I hate even saying this. It makes me. We had an elementary school get shot up, and
Mm-hmm.
not a single item of gun legislation happened after it. Then a high school got shot up, and zero like. Then Las Vegas. I mean, and now is not the time, and it's a bad egg. Well, there are a lot of bad eggs, and I don't know what the answer is, but I do think we think talking about it every time someone goes on air and says, these shootings need to stop. Yes, they do. Everyone hates a mass shooting. There, problem solved until the next one. And then they say the same things about mass shootings are bad.
Yeah, and the solution to mass shootings is arming more people.
Yes, somehow.
I mean, the problem is this, and I've said this, and you and I might have said this. We might have talked about this on the phone on our non-televised podcasts, where I don't think we're not smart enough, like we're not strong enough to bear the weight of our own history. Like as a nation, we can't bear the weight of it. You know what I mean? It's too much for us because it contradicts too much with who we actually think we are versus who we actually are.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so we can't really bear the weight of it because we're not strong enough and we're surely not smart enough. Like we don't have the critical thinking skills to actually think about it from a distance and not take it personally, right? Like we take it too personally, whether the person that it happened to or the person who did it or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? We're just not strong enough to bear it. And I don't think we're smart enough to deal with our present and our future either. Like we're not smart enough to deal with technology. What are you gonna say? I keep feeling
Just
like you're gonna say
no,
something.
no. I mean, because you're firing all these synapses in my head in a wonderful way. Thank you for that. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the idea that we're not smart enough. I don't know if it's an emotional response that we are unable to deal with the weight of our history, or if we're just so stupid that I know we don't learn from it, because, and again, to go politics, Trump rode to the presidency the exact goddamn Southern strategy that Nixon used. I mean, it was basically a point by point. And so if you think we're more developed, intelligent, or better people than we were when we elected Nixon, we got worse. We got a lot worse, because at least Nixon had a few morals. He was pro environment. He had, yeah. So I was just saying we don't we don't study our history because we don't care, and therefore we never learn from it, and we just keep repeating the same. I read, I think I talked about it on here with, I can't remember, the book The Premonition, about the pandemic, which is just not just the parallels to the flu of, what was it, 1918 or whatever they said, of the same thing, shit was going to happen over again, but even more recent history. I mean, we just repeat the same fucking things over and over, just in different ways, or even the same ways. So I read the 9/11 Commission cover to cover, and the summation of that book is government doesn't talk to itself. They just, it's big government, and this doesn't, like you said, the heart and brain don't communicate with one another. They can't find a way to get along. Agencies get their little bits of information and they hold on to them because, like, I got this. If I share information, then that weakens me somehow. So when the pandemic hit, you had all these little isolated areas going, oh shit, this is happening, I know what's going on. And then big government going, what do we do? And 600,000 people are now dead.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's funny. I've been meditating more and doing more yoga and doing more journaling.
Yes.
And it just sounds so trite to say, well, after
it
my
sounds
meditation,
new agey.
After my meditation, I was reading in my journal and it just sounds so...
Wait, sorry, hold on. I think I just heard a car full of Bostonians yell "fag" when you said you meditate and write in your journal.
God, I was going to cancel you worse. The LGBTQIA plus.
I'm just talking about what I heard a Boston guy yell.
Or the Bostonians.
The Bostonian yelled it, not me.
Those blessed Red Sox fans. I was writing something about how the forgetting makes you weak, Like, if you don't actually know your history, it makes you weak. Like, it actually weakens you, right?
I would agree with that. Like, continue. Yeah, I like this train of thought.
Because there's something to be said for the remembering of things that have happened, not the dwelling on them, but the remembering and the repeatedly, like, making sure the children don't forget either. Do you know what I mean? There's something about that is real. And again, I hesitate to talk about the Jewish people because I'm not Jewish, right? But like, what I know...
Are you circumcised?
I am.
Not close enough. Yeah, that's pretty much Jewish.
That's... Oy vey.
I mean, didn't they invent that? Wasn't that the thing that got the Pharaoh all pissed off? I don't know my history or religion, but
clearly
sure they were the first ones to go snippy, right?
I couldn't tell you.
I'm pretty sure Egyptians all have anteaters.
Maybe. Let's ask them. But I what I do know about it is that I know that there's a lot of memorizing of ancient text.
Yes.
And there's a lot of memorizing of history. And there's a lot of memorizing of a lot of things. And the history, I don't know how much it gets diluted from generation to generation. Like, I have no idea. But it seems as if somebody's keeping a close watch on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And making sure that shit gets transferred properly. And if you look at the success of a community,
yeah,
it has a slogan such as "never forget," right? Like, they're like, fuck off, we're not forgetting shit. We saw exactly, and I don't know that I agree with that or don't agree with it, but I do find it interesting that in this country, what we say mostly when we have some kind of tragedies, don't talk about it. Like, pretend it didn't happen and it will go away. And if you look at more successful communities, that's not what they do. And it doesn't mean that I don't know that the Jews hate the Germans or anything like that, right? But what I do know is that they have made sure that their children understand their history, their culture, and their religion, and have a sense of community, right? And all that stuff is tied in, right? Like, it's all just each one of those things is glue that holds the other thing together. Like it's like, five magnets that all pull together and become stronger when they get together, right? Like it's really like Voltron.
I was just going to say Voltron, but I
I
wasn't going to
know.
interrupt you again. I have two thoughts. One, I started laughing because you reminded me of a comedian's joke. I can't remember the comedian, or I'd give credit, but I'm going to do the joke poorly, so maybe I shouldn't give credit. But it was after 9/11. Everyone was saying never forget. He goes, I will never forget 9/11. Subsequently, I've forgotten the Alamo, something like that, which I thought was pretty
Right.
good. Um, but to not argue point, but maybe to expand on it, it's not that whenever something bad happens, we say, don't talk about it. It's, and I'm doing this off the fly, so bear with me. If we feel wronged, 9/11, Pearl Harbor, oil embargo of the 70s, we'll fucking talk about it all day long because they did that to us.
Right.
But if we participate in something tacitly, silently, the church scandal, the Boy Scout scandal, that is what we don't talk about because we're a part of that. That happens and we allow it to happen. So don't talk about it. Yeah, we should have done something, but we didn't. So don't talk about it. So that's, to me, the two differences is yeah, if it happens to us, we'll talk about it all day long. My grandfather was, old man. He could have been the most racist person in the world, but he was a champion of civil rights. But, and a trigger warning, I'm going to use a racial slur here. He would never forgive, as he called them, the Japs. I mean, here's a guy that was old enough to be racist against black people, but he loved them and said, you have to be tolerant, but not against the people that bombed Pearl Harbor. It,
Right.
if so, again, the point I'm making over and over is something happens to us, we'll talk about it all day long. We are complicit, we'll shut up about it because that's who we are as
But
Americans.
this is what I mean. Like what? All right. What relationship have you ever had in your life with any person, any living creature, in which your accountability was never brought into question
No,
and
with my
should
dog.
never have been? Right.
Yeah.
So
I
right,
mean,
you know what I mean? Like that's what we're talking about here. But like if we're talking about from person to person, like why, and that's what I mean. Like we're not strong enough to bear the weight of our history because we're stupid.
mm-hmm.
We're fucking stupid. Like that's what it is. Like when I
That's why we
say,
have flat earthers and Michelle Bachmann and anti-vaxxers and chemtrail and truthers and
but
moon
but
landing and
but when I say like love, compassion, intelligence, and discipline, these are like four things that these are my four things. Right? They don't have to be everybody's four things, but I feel like intelligence has to be one of them. Like you have to like do whatever you can do to make yourself as smart as you can be because it's actually hard. It like takes a lot of intelligence to be a human being in a world where like we are biologically driven to do certain things and sociologically driven to do things that are counter to those things, and like and we're hardwired for a sense of community and have a sense of belonging, but then when weaponized, that becomes, oh my god, how many likes did I get? Right.
yeah,
It's like, right, like we're not smart enough to not be cruel to each other and manipulate each other using our biological weaknesses, right? Like, Ray Kroc just has a whole shitload of real estate with McDonald's, but he also just preys on our need for fucking fat and sugar. Do
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like he just literally plays on a biological predisposition for junk food practice. I don't know that we have not for junk food, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like
no. I mean, the
it's like
supersize me proved that. He said you get
right,
an endorphin rush when you eat that. But
right. Like we weaponize our biology and our psychology against each other. That's stupid. Like it's
well,
a, it's a self-terminating system. Do you know what I mean? Like
I
it
do.
just, anyway.
I feel sad saying this, or I feel bad because yeah, I always joke about my stupid friends from high school,
Mm-hmm.
and
You do often
I
actually.
do. Um, but because I can joke about it, because I really like them, you know? But if I break it down, and if I'm being honest, and this could lose me friendships if any of them ever watch this, because they don't, I know that they're intellectually incurious. They lack a curiosity for the world around them, which is why they all still live in the same small area we grew up in, which is why they watch echo chamber news, and they generally don't read books or watch documentaries. It's a lot of them like the same music we listened to in high school, and it's like I can do that for a song. I have Sirius XM. I can put on like, like, oh yeah, dig it, dig it, but I can't listen to an album of it. I can't listen to 15, 20 because I'm not there anymore. I'm failing. I'm not tooting my own horn here. I am failing, but I am trying to grow and expand as a person. And I look around and see so many people uninterested in growing and expanding. I've got mine. This is enough. And then going all the way back to where we started, my community doesn't want any change to what's going on right now because I've got mine.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
I
think a
mean,
lack of intellectual curiosity is scary, and that is really what is damaging us. We can say we're stupid all day long and joke about it, but I think there is a genuine lack of curiosity by many people, and I'm not limiting it to Americans now. I bet if you go elsewhere, there are people all over this planet that just, you know.
I don't know. I'm gonna say that you're probably right that it is a global situation, but I think that some of the particular ills that befall us are manufactured to make us much easier and better consumers.
Oh,
I know that
absolutely.
you know what I mean, like, and I know that like that happens all over the place, right? But there still are, and then maybe I'm just being naive, but I think that there are still cultures that take education seriously. You know, like I don't know
Probably.
this to be a fact, but like I I believe places like Germany and Switzerland, and I think they take education seriously. You know what I mean? Like I know people from China and Russia, and what we were considering hard math in high school, they were doing in sixth grade because you can. It's just math, right? I don't want to say it's just math, but it's like they were doing complex math in grade school that when we were in high school, we're complaining that it's difficult, right? And that doesn't mean that they pride themselves on education in a way that we don't, but it does mean that we're not necessarily pushing ourselves.
No,
You know
what
what I
are we
mean?
in education, like 30th or something in
Right,
the
but that's what
world?
I
I don't
mean.
know.
But but like we pride ourselves on kind of being stupid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we actually, that's like a badge of honor
Well,
to
yeah,
be
intellect.
stupid and to
Whenever it
be
comes time to vote, don't vote
closed-minded.
for them liberal elites with their Harvard educations.
Right.
Yeah,
Like that, all that book learning. Right.
I mean,
All those
George Bush
people.
got elected in part, and I'm not saying this, but like he seemed like someone you could have a beer with. Like, is that what you
Right.
want? No, I didn't want to hang out with Al Gore. He seemed like a stiff, like non-interesting. But I
I
want someone
mean, dude, but,
smart in charge. Look what
but,
happened when
but,
we had someone stupid in charge. The economy fell
but
fucking apart.
let's be honest, right? If I had to go out partying, am I going to go out with Trump or am I going to go out with Obama? Like, really, let's be honest. If we're looking to have a really good
Well,
time,
Trump was friends
I'm
with
going to go.
Epstein and they had fuck islands.
Right.
So
Right. I'm hanging out with Trump if I'm
yeah,
looking for a good time. I'm not hanging out with Obama. Like, I don't think that'd be fun. I mean, I'm kidding. It'd probably be a
no,
little.
it'd be fun, but in a different
It's
way.
probably
It's like if you want to let loose, you hang
right.
out with Trump. If you want to have a nice
Right. Well,
conversation, you hang
no,
out with
not even
Obama.
let loose. Like if you want to get laid and get drunk
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wake up in a hotel room with strange people around you and everybody in partial states of disrobe and a heroin needle sticking out of your arm, Trump's your guy. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like that's you want to
Yeah.
go. But you want to go maybe like smoke a joint and have a beer and have some nice cool conversation with some pretty smart people. Probably hang out with Obama and his boys. right? Because that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a glass of wine, some really high quality weed, probably, and you sit around and have a very civilized, spirited debate,
And
probably.
both of those things can be fun given your mood,
Absolutely.
temperament, and like
I mean,
I don't think you'd
I
want to do either of them every night.
I mean, I
Well, here,
would
let's look
take
at it this way. If you absolutely gunned ahead had to choose one of those every day for 4 years,
no, I'd much
you'd
rather hang out with Obama.
you'd want the glass of wine and the good joint. I mean,
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
blowout, the
of
waking up
course.
with a heroin, that can be
Yeah, I
fun,
mean,
but you don't want to do it
just
over and over and over.
and how many bags of lime do you have to bury dead hookers if you're hanging out with Trump? Jesus Christ,
Oh, he does it for you.
Right? He's like, oh, don't worry, I own a factory.
Yeah, I mean, my new Michael Cohen's on that shit.
Oh boy.
Oh, we should start
But
putting a bow on this present or this cherry on this Sunday to the world.
yeah. Oh
Any
man.
closing thoughts?
I don't know. We
No, I
covered a
wrote
lot
down
here.
something earlier that we're not going to get into. Well, we can talk
Okay.
about it last week, or we can talk about it last week. When we get into our time machine, we can go back and
That's
we
right.
can talk about it
We
next
when
week.
we get that
Here I am
DeLorean.
calling others stupid, and I can't even. At least that's a nice thing about me is I will insult anybody, but I know I'm stupid. So at least I'm self-aware that I'm a fucking moron.
I mean, I think the problem for me is ultimately that like it takes most people too long to figure out that they're stupid. Like by the time we figure out that like we have that we are capable of doing evil and it's basically a choice, right? Like you wake up and you choose whether to be a shitty person or a good person, and you really like it's a choice, and it's not always an easy one because we have a real capacity to justify our own stupid behavior.
Well, not even our
Right?
own stupid behavior. I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize, but
No, no.
Lydia, um, my wife just spent. She left for Orlando Saturday at 1 p.m. and no, sorry, she left for Miami Saturday at 1 p.m. And finally, her dad just fucking drove to Orlando to meet her because, I mean, she just spent flight after flight after flight getting canceled and getting put in a hotel room. It was supposed to be fly to Chicago, fly to Miami. And instead, it was fly to Milwaukee, fly to Chicago, sit in Chicago, sit in Chicago, sit in Chicago, spend the night in Chicago, get up, fly to Orlando, sit in Orlando, spend. And so we talked on the phone, and she said, "Yeah, the more I watch people yell at these clerks, these people at the desks, the nicer I'm trying to be. Because am I frustrated? Yes. Am I pissed? Absolutely. Do I know that yelling at this person behind the counter is going to make anything better? Yes, I know that's not going to happen. I know. So it's not even a matter of being stupid. It's a matter of being aware and understanding situationally where you are and how to treat people. I mean, she made a conscious
But
decision to treat people nicely when she was at
yeah,
her worst, at her wit's end.
yeah. I mean, and we lead with our feelings here. Like we all like every group of people wants to talk about, like what's that idiot Ben Shapiro with
Yeah.
his coffee mug says liberal tears on it or some
Mm-hmm.
shit. That's pretty funny. Actually, like the first
It
time I
is,
saw it, I
but
was like, oh, that's fucking funny. That's some funny shit.
then you hear him
But
speak and you're like, oh,
but then you hear him like complaining whenever somebody says something. He's the first person to whine and cry. Like the conservatives are the first people to whine and cry anytime anybody says something about them, while they're telling everybody else that they're being like soft snowflakes. It's
yeah.
like, what is going on here? Right? Like we have an inability to see ourselves objectively as a people, and that could be just part of the human condition. But that's what I mean, right? Like we'll talk about religion for a second. I think God's a sadistic comedian if there is a God. I think God's
I
a
would hope
sadistic
so.
comedian because like who would make us so vulnerable to our own weaknesses? You know what I mean?
Well,
Who would give us intelligence and then the inability to see ourselves objectively?
a
And you know what I
sociopath,
mean?
an
Right, like
asshole. Yeah.
right, like it's like I don't know, I'm partially joking, but at the same time, it's just like we're not smart.
No, I think the best,
We're
talk
not
about
very
God being a
smart.
sadistic comedian. I think South Park was brilliant in their episode where they pointed out that Earth is just a reality show for the rest of the galaxy.
Right. Yeah, like that's what it feels like. It's like one big version of the Truman Show. Yeah, it's
Oh,
like,
I wish we could achieve that. I think it's more like one big version of Big Brother,
right, exactly.
which I've never heard, but I reference it because I've seen enough headlines to know that's just to put him
Yeah,
in a house and let him fight. Okay,
yeah,
so Jersey Shore. Well, again, I've never seen it,
right,
but again, we're
right. Yeah, that's right. It's like fucking nonsense. But
okay.
I think that
Closing thought that because you just I thought of something like Jersey Shore that I finally get reality TV, and I'm tying this all together where we are
Mhm.
stupid, but one thing that makes us feel better is at least I'm not them. Because a joke I'm working on, and it is that I saw a headline. This is all true. Saw a headline that said Marion was initially apprehensive about having to marry her grandfather, and I'm like, that's a fucked up headline. So I clicked it, and it was about the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City because Mormonism and magic underpants and marrying your grandpa, I guess. But I'm like, oh, I get it. I've had problems in my life, but I've never been married to my grandma. My life is pretty good. And that's what Jersey Shore is like, okay, my life sucks and I work this job I hate, but I'm not those fuckheads until you realize that those fuckheads are now millionaires, or at least they were until they blew it all because they're stupid, which I heard is a lot of them. I guess one of them went to jail too, but they got handed all this money, didn't know what to do with it, didn't pay their taxes. But the whole point is we're all stupid, but then we are pitted against one another, not just along lines of race or religion, but everything. Now, reality TV levels the playing field so we can all sit in judgment and go, at least I'm not them. Or, haha, look at them. They're dumber than me. And that's supposed to make us feel better about ourselves.
Yeah, I mean the problem is that like the judgment, the people who the judgment hurt the most are us, right? Like that's the fucked up part about judgment, right?
Yeah, we sit here
The,
calling people stupid and everyone's judging us like, I'm not going to watch those fucking assholes. They're the stupid
well,
vodcast.
but I mean, but it's like, but it's one of those things where like
To be
if
fair, we're not talking
I
about you, dear viewer. We like you
right,
because you're smart and are watching us.
exactly, right, both of you. But like, like if I'm sitting around when I go to a club and I sit there with my arms folded, staring at the musicians and judging them, right? That same judgy voice is the one in my head that stops me from doing the very thing I'm judging them for doing poorly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the two things are intimately connected to each other. If I see somebody displaying an immense amount of stage presence or something like that, and I start judging them because it looks too hammy to me, then I might not do any of that because I'm afraid somebody's gonna judge me the same way. And
I've got a kid awake, I think.
uh-oh. But like the way that when I stop, I like it was very liberating for me to not be so judgmental. I'm still pretty fucking judgmental, but it is the one thing that's one of the major dragons that I need to slay in my own life is just
Yeah,
like, you
same.
know what I mean? But and I think I'm on the way because I realized that at the end of the day, I'm as much of a bigger piece of shit as everybody else is, right? Like I have the capacity to be amazing and the capacity to be a complete wretched piece of shit, right? And because I have the capacity for both, I just have to make better choices. And sometimes that does mean being smarter, right? It means be smarter to be able to trust yourself, right? Like, because that's one of the biggest things. We have this feeling, right? My instinct, or I have to trust myself, or it's who I am. And it's like, we're so fucking untrustworthy. We're such an unreliable narrator of our own lives and our own existences that it's unbelievable, right? Like how many of the worst situations that ever happened in your life are because you thought something or felt something or wanted to do something. Do you know what I mean? Right? Like most of the worst shit that's ever happened to you is some shit you did to yourself. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't actually trust ourselves to be stewards of our own best behavior. Right? Like
I
because
posted
we're
a
stupid.
meme on
You know what I mean?
Facebook the
It's
other
just
day.
fucked up.
Yeah, I posted a meme on Facebook Sunday. I don't know. It was the caption read, "Even though this is clearly marked and I can read it and understand it, I'm still going to date this box for 6 months." And the box was a box, and it said red flags, and it was filled with red flags. And it was like, yeah, that was me as I saw going in there.
I
All
think
right,
the
well,
joke.
let's.
I think the joke I made was I saw when I met her, she was wearing a dress made out of red flags, and all I said was, "Wow, red looks good on you."
Yeah, it's the same thing. You know, going in sometimes, and you do it anyway.
It's like, oh, that's a really nice color on you.
All right. Well, let's whore ourselves.
Yes, indeed.
If you want to see what two cocky assholes that call everybody else stupid, but we
Oh,
call
dude.
ourselves stupid too,
I
do,
mean, yeah, man.
you can visit nathantimmel.com, where the
Mm-hmm.
first thing you'll see is a link to my new, not new anymore, but newish, it's only a couple months old. If we're a baby, it couldn't talk or walk. Book, We Are 100. It's available on Amazon. People like it, gets good reviews. And
Mm-hmm.
first professional review came and was very
Oh,
positive.
oh, snap.
And this was actually very funny. It said, I read the review and I started laughing or actually I was shocked. So the review opens with, "Hey, I have to let you readers know that there is a huge plot hole in this book, but also I'm telling you because I don't care. The book is so good that I know some people might care, like, hey, this is a huge plot." And I'm like, "There's a plot hole." And I quick open the book. I'm like, "Oh shit, there is." And I started laughing because I'm like, how did I not see this? Basically, at the end of one chapter or in the middle of a chapter, I say, "Yes, I destroyed my computer." And in the next chapter, they go to look at the computer and like, it's like, but it's supposed to be destroyed. So the neat thing about self-publishing is I was able to go into Amazon, tweak 2 sentences, and now the book has no plot hole. All I had to do is change 2 sentences. So anybody that buys the book from this point forward, or anybody that reads the review and says, "Wow, that's a pretty good review, but there was no plot hole," I fixed it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
well, what about all your idiot friends like me who are read it and totally missed that? Like, oh, like
I wrote it
50
and I missed
people,
it, for fuck's
right?
sake.
Right, but you're allowed to because you're like, you're
I had a
all up in
handful of
it. You know what I
proofreaders
mean?
that missed it.
There are like a bunch of people, proofreaders, friends, loved ones. Everybody read it. It was like,
Yep.
hey, good job, man. And like, totally didn't tell you your zipper was down. Holy
Yep.
shit, man. Nice fucking friends.
All
With
right.
friends
Plug
like that,
yourself. I plug you every week.
enemies.
KatieHenryMusic.com. What
Yeah,
you got going on?
katiehenrymusic.com. We have 2 gigs coming up. We just played over the weekend at Bernie's, which I love Bernie's.
Yeah.
It's like a roadhouse, you know.
My
I
podcast with
love
my
it.
buddy Jake, we always joke about this. If you have a time machine, yes, go back and kill Hitler, and then go see Katie Henry Band at Bernie's several days
Exactly.
ago.
Exactly. See,
First kill
right.
Hitler, then see
And then
the
come
gig
back. Right.
Barrett's talking about. That was a couple
Exactly.
days back already that you missed.
Exactly.
But what do you got
But
coming
we
up? The
we
gigs
have
coming up.
one. I think we're off until July. We have the 2 videos need to be shot. Record is done. We need to final mixes. I think are done. We need to get it mastered. So it's just we're doing like
Yeah,
photo
these things happen
shoots
slow. You
and
don't. You got to start a promo machine.
yeah,
You got to start getting it
right.
like.
Yeah, it's like building up all the tools, getting the pictures done, getting the
Does
video
it have a
shot.
title yet?
We're in negotiations.
Ah,
We're in negotiations, trying to figure out which one of the songs should it be named after a song. Should it be named after what will be probably the single or just what will be the singles. It's fascinating what goes on behind the scenes. I'm always like I could give 2 shits because
no, it's
it's
important shit.
not.
You should give a
I
shit.
mean, I
I hate to bring
care.
up the same band. I always do, but I remember when you two released All That You Can't Leave Behind. Larry's comment was, "Oh yeah, that'll look great on a T-shirt," and so then they called the tour the Elevation Tour off one of the singles. But it was like, I
Right,
mean, he was already thinking about that. It's like, yeah, great name, but does it fit on a T-shirt? Does it fit on a
right.
poster? Does it, like, so these are important things. You should care.
I mean, I care, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's gonna stop people from coming to the show. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's my honest
but
feeling
it
is
can't
it's
hurt
not
to have
gonna.
the best title possible.
It's true. And so that's why we're in the process of whittling it down and you know
Mm-hmm.
it's decision by committee a little bit. A small committee, but still decision by committee. You know what I
Well,
mean?
sneak me an email with some of the things, and I'll give you my
Yeah,
2 cents that you can either like and go ooh and champion as your own ideas, or go,
exactly.
wow, Timlet's got some fucking horrible ideas, and ignore them.
Yes, yes, indeed.
And then
It's a
you,
brilliant idea.
AntarGoodwin.com, are going into the
Yes,
studio for yourself in August.
I
A
am
second
indeed.
album.
Well, EP-ish.
Well,
Yeah.
an EP, well, a second recording. You went and
Yes.
did the songs with Katie Henry, that because you're the musical
Yes.
director, but you got your own stuff coming. So lots
Yeah.
to look for in the future, ladies and kids.
Yeah, it's gonna be some fun stuff. I'm excited.
And
So
again, I've heard the demos. People watching haven't heard the demos, but I have. And they're fucking great. I mean,
it's some good shit, man.
When I listen to
It's
the
some good
demos, I
shit.
hear in my head, oh, the potential. Like you said,
Yeah.
Katie Henry's the album was potential realized, and I'm hearing the demos and I'm hearing potential. So I can't wait to hear the finished product on those. All right,
I'm
let's stop
excited too.
jerking
Yes,
ourselves off.
indeed.
This is
Indeed.
people probably tune out. They're like, oh, now they're gonna plug themselves. Click.
Yeah.
So,
Indeed.
all right, thanks for watching. You can
absolutely.
hit share. You can
tell
your views. You can tell your friends to watch us.
That's right.
All right, bye.
See ya.